So, are you excited for this?
I'm very excited about this. Audience, I hope you're excited about this because this is basically something that's 30 years in the making.
I I I I have not seen this episode. First of all, I have not watched the show in 15 years maybe.
Yeah, they only really did what do you call it? They only really did reruns on Lifetime. That's really like the only network that ever did reruns of this. It's basically like considered a lost classic because a lot of people forgot about it except for like Southern Queens.
Right.
And so because it didn't get the rerun kind of life that a lot of the other shows got. I mean, it was literally a contemporary of like Golden Girls and those shows, and they were at the time it was just as popular as those shows.
It and if you want to watch Designing Women with us,
Yes,
I'm watching it on Hulu.
Hulu.
That is the only place I've seen to legally stream it.
Unless you want to buy the DVD collector's items at Amazon.
I mean, and if somebody out there in the world wants to gift those to us, we will not say no.
No, I'm sure. I doubt it costs more than $30, probably.
So, I'm going to take this intro. You can do next week's.
Cool.
This is episode 1.
Wait, hold on. Before we do episode 1.
Yeah, go ahead.
Before we do episode 1, we should give like a little background on the show, right? Like, we should talk
I guess you're right. Go
before
ahead.
Before we dive right into the show, we should at least like give some background. So, all right. So, dear listeners, dear listener, so
this one will probably get up to 12 at least.
Yeah, exactly. I think that this is going to be fun, right? This is like literally a show that's near and dear to our hearts as two Southern gay boys. Now, for people that aren't familiar with Designing Women, so Designing Women was a show that ran on CBS for 7 seasons.
7 seasons, 163 episodes, I believe.
Yep. It was between September 29th, 1986 and May 24th, 1993. So technically, this show really encapsulates our childhood to teenage years because that's literally like when we started school. The producers of the show, Harry Thompson and Linda Bloodworth Thompson, were very, very popular sitcom writers and producers at the time. And this itself was a little bit of a controversial one for them because of the nature of the times. Remember, it was 86, so we're still talking about the Reagan years. It was still a very conservative America.
And these two Clintonites, for lack of a better term, they supported Clinton. They probably helped him get to office for.
Yeah, they were big. Yeah. They were large. They had a large liberal presence. You know, like I said, this is at a time when liberal wasn't really a thing in Hollywood because everybody kind of kept under the radar, so to speak, right? Because of the conservative kind of takeover of the country for a little bit. But this was kind of their little bit of I guess you'd call it a reactionary TV show to where they felt the country was going. So much like some of their other shows at the time, you know, Night Court was talking about kind of basically in a funny way criminal justice. Golden Girls was talking about ageism and things like that. So Designing Women kind of put their foot in the field as speaking about feminist issues.
Correct. And Murphy Brown was in there doing the same thing.
That's right.
It ended up, they started, they were nearly canceled after the first season.
Mm-hmm.
And due to viewer backlash, they were forced to put it back on Monday night. CBS rotated them around to multiple different time slots, trying to find the right one, which always kills. They received a lot of viewer backlash, and they put it on just before Murphy Brown.
Yep.
And which led to a very feminist hour-long block.
Yes.
I can't think of a better way to put that, but it was a huge feminist hour-long block.
I mean, when you put it into context, there really technically hasn't been a block of comedies since like that, because these two shows were unashamedly feminist and feminine empowering.
Right. I mean, in this show, you have a single woman, a divorced woman, a well, a recently divorced woman, a woman who has been divorced multiple times for money, basically, and
A widower.
a widower, yeah, and it's and Meshach Taylor, um, who is absent for the first episode, which I didn't even realize.
Yep.
But I do. We may address this a little bit more later on. Why didn't he just play a gay man? Like,
we're gonna get. We'll dive into Meshach Taylor. We'll dive into that pool later.
yeah. That is a deep pool of a lot of things that we're going to get into.
Yeah, so, episode 1, Designing Women. That's literally the episode title.
Yes, the pilot.
Yep.
Oh, God.
And it looks like a pilot, too.
Oh, it really does. It really does. So the first thing, we go in, right? Like, we go into the house. We see the house. First of all, even before that, when Georgia on My Mind started playing, which everyone out there, I just want to tell a little beef that I have with the Ray Charles family. I was talking to Auntie Maim Noire before this started. So Georgia on My Mind was made the Georgia state song, and should technically be in public domain as it is the state song and is performed basically as their anthem. However, Ray Charles is, and it's specifically the arrangement by Ray Charles. However, the Charles family, the children after his death, decided to litigate anybody who uses that song that's not affiliated with the state of Georgia. So we will not be using that song for our theme song.
No, we can't. Hey, I did find out a cool thing though, because I was actually, when we were talking about the theme song, I actually thought about that too, and I was like, oh, because I remembered that he didn't do it in the beginning, right? So I was like, oh, because he didn't even, it wasn't even like a part of the show that it was him. Do you know who did the theme song at the beginning?
Who?
Doc Severinsen from The Tonight Show.
Fantastic.
Right? I was like, what a great, like, talk about, like, still some more, like, TV nostalgia and, like, that kind of connection. I was like, that for me made the show even better, just to think of, like, him and his, like, little fancy outfits that he was always wearing on The Tonight Show, conducting his little orchestra during the theme song. I was like, that's so cool.
So we first, the theme song gives you chills. You go through pictures of all of them, ending with Meshach Taylor, who's not in the episode. Like, I'm so glad that they put him in the credits for the plot, because he ain't even been thought about yet.
Well, the cool part was though is that, like, I mean, based on the opening, you clearly they thought this show is definitely getting picked up, because they already had an opening with a character that's not even in the first episode, which is the pilot. So they're like, no, it's gonna get picked up. We'll put him in there.
So we come in, and there's Jean Smart, comic genius, playing Charlene,
and dramatic genius.
Genius. In front of the largest chair I think I've ever seen. They went to Wicker and Rattan Warehouse and put her in this. This chair does not stay beyond the pilot, but it is.
I mean, if audience, if you're not going to watch the episode, we'll give you a better description of this. So if you are a person in their late 30s, early 40s, 50s, the old school wicker chairs that people used to use for their photos back in the day, back in the 80s, they literally have one of those as Charlene's desk chair, which makes literally no sense at all.
But girl, this is not even that kind of chair. This is that on double steroids. Like, she sits down in this thing, and it comes up behind her and over her head. Like, it is, and she is a tall woman. Like, she's about 6 feet tall. It is insane. In taupe heels, always in taupe heels.
But it does. But the thing is, right? Like it kind of does make sense, right? Because as the episode first gets started, right? They like without saying it at first, you get an understanding from the set that this is very slapdash company. Like it's like they're basically the entire house is full of things that you're like at first you're not making any sense, and you're like, oh wait, they actually don't even have storage space for the elements. So I mean, obviously they changed it as the show built on, but that first episode, that was part of the whole ambiance. Is like, oh, this place is like still getting off the ground, and you know, of course they're using the actual like setting chairs for the, you know, this is going to get sold to a person in a couple of days.
And then Charlene's on the phone. Gene Smart plays Charlene, and then you walk through the door.
Oh, stop it.
Mary Jo Shively going absolutely bonkers, just wandering in, played by Annie Potts.
Dang it, you weren't supposed to tell the audience yet that I'm Annie Potts in disguise.
Just comes flailing in, flabbergasted by this house she saw that she was getting ready to do the interior design for. Like...
Well, no, remember it was in the middle of a bidding war, right? So also, like, I think I actually jotted down my favorite joke about that little scene, right? Because there's always jokes throughout the whole episode. But I love that they said that they're so rich the dog's name is Richard, but they call him Dick. And then she said, they must have liked me because they said I could call him Dick. I was like, what?
Oh, God. Oh, yeah. And then, like, you get like a minute and a half of her just describing this house, and then she said that they have lions in this house, lions roaring, you know, not like those ceramic jockeys, but real lions. Girl, I have an honest question. Was she talking about a lawn jockey?
You know she was. It's society in metropolitan Georgia. Of course she was. But here's funny part, right? Because that's actually the first little hint, right? In the show, that little joke is the first hint as to like where this show is going to go, right? Because there are multiple jokes within the first episode that basically say, we're going to talk about sexism. We're going to talk about racism. We're going to talk about, like, all throughout the first episode that it was like, oh, you know, we were too young then, right? We were 6. But it was like watching it now, I was like, oh my gosh, all of the writing was right there.
So then I enter. Miss Julia Sugarbaker. Played by Dixie Carter. Woo! Comes in and just slams her head on her desk.
Oh man, she's such a I love that woman so very much.
So I learned something interesting.
Okay.
So she throughout, you'll find out throughout this year, or throughout these years I should do this, is a stalwart of liberal principle, right? She was a Republican in real life. A Republican who she was a Reagan Republican, but in later, for every liberal rant she had, and I want to watch it, see if it's true. For every liberal rant she had, the producers made sure she was able to sing a song. So it should later on balance out for every liberal rant song.
Whoa! So it was like a trade-off.
Yeah.
Whoa. That is really interesting.
Yeah, I don't know if it's true or not, but that is the rumor of the time.
Well, I mean, you remember though, like especially in the South, there were a lot of Reagan Republicans.
Yep.
But that's what we would now call fiscal Republicans. Yep. And it wasn't until the whole crossover where conservative, like social conservatives started taking over, that you did have people like that eventually they did vote for people like Clinton, because they did have like black family relatives or gay family relatives and all, and like they didn't like that those groups were being attacked. So that makes a lot of sense. I actually think that, if I'm not mistaken, I want to say that my dad voted for Reagan the second time around, because of like his whole, not liking taxes, and that was still a thing that was valid back then.
Yep. Well, Julia comes in and she introduces us to the main issue throughout like all 7 years that the poor sugar bakers will always have: money.
The show, they are always on the cusp of closing. They're always on the cusp of losing money. And it was really crazy because now something did happen in this episode that I had to look it up because I didn't realize this, right? But Julia said something in the first episode to Charlene, and I was like, wait a minute. And remember, she said, of all the time you've known me, right? She makes this comment when she's talking about the money investment.
Yeah.
And I was like, all the time she's known her. And I was like, I don't get that line. And so I went back and researched it. Come to find out, Charlene was the secretary of Julia's dead husband.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So I had no idea, like, because you're trying to figure out like why a show has a rapport that it has, right?
Yeah.
And so I realized as I was rewatching this for like the 18th time, I was like, it doesn't make sense, right? The way they interact with each other doesn't make sense. And so then I found that out. I was like, wait, that means that Julia and Charlene have actually known each other for years.
Mm-hmm.
And, because it was like Charlene gave half of her savings to Julia and all of those things I was confused about.
Yep.
But then when I read that, I was like, oh, so that makes so much more sense now, why they have this almost sisterly bond between them.
Yeah, Charlene gave half of her savings to Julia. Mary Jo, you come find out, gave everything except for basically her children's college fund.
Yep.
To do this.
Which that gets into a whole nother ball game as this episode winds into things because.
Oh yeah.
But we're not gonna make a quantum leap to that part yet.
The world's most boring character actor. We'll get to that in a little bit. We'll get to that enterprise in a little while. So then Julia walks over and finds a random lamp that somebody returned, and he doesn't like it because, and these are just the little side jokes that always come up in this. He doesn't like it because it makes his nudes look too lewd.
Right. Except for the ones with wings, because they're angels.
Exactly. And I think if I remember correctly, this person is a recurring, crazy house that they just keep on going through over and over and over and over again. He's
basically their biggest customer.
Yes.
He's a running gag through the whole series. Like, he's always having them do something to his house. Also undercurrent, because he wants to have sex with all of them. Like, that's like really what it comes down to, but none of them do it. So,
and then we break to the oddest commercial break. Like, who put this here? It was the 80s. It was the 80s, and it's the pilot. That's why it's right here. We have to put these commercials in. So go get your tab, and then we come back.
Tab, yes.
So we find out Charlene may have a boyfriend. And blah, blah, blah. Who cares? Because Delta Burke walks in.
Everything stops when Delta Burke walks in. So, dear listeners. We're going to pause here for a moment to just explain to you that for myself and the divine Miss Mims here, in 1986, we thought Delta Burke was one of the greatest things that ever happened to television. Literally, we were obsessed with Delta Burke, almost as much as her contemporary Anne Gillian, who was also very big at that time. Can we do a podcast about Up All Night, by the way? Just can we please?
I'd forgotten about that.
Can we single-handedly bring back up all night, and then also do a podcast about It's a Living, about there were so many amazing all-female cast shows in the early 80s.
We could do a podcast of It's a Living. There's only 14 episodes.
I want to so bad. That'll be a side project. We'll do that for like a holiday episode.
The failed sitcom podcast. Let's do it.
Oh my goodness. Let's just
Anyway, Delta
sorry. Delta
Focus.
Sorry,
focus on those sunglasses.
So, can I tell you, her outfit, I kind of want to like recreate it now for drag, because the whole thing was just a magnificent it was like Dynasty run through Dixieland.
Like, she was perfect. Let's Delta Burke plays Suzanne Sugarbaker, Julia's younger sister, who a very flirtatious woman, we'll call it. She has a bunch of ex-husbands.
What was the joke? Charlene, I think you've misplaced all of my alimony checks. And Charlene says, no, no, Suzanne, they're right here in alphabetical order.
Yeah. And like Delta Burke herself, you'll come later on to find out she's playing a former Miss Georgia. Mm-hmm. Delta Burke herself was actually a Miss Florida. Like, she's beautiful in that 80s way. She's got this bright black hair. Yeah. I can't think of a way to say it more than bright black.
That's the best way to describe it. Somehow it's both of those things.
Yeah. Beautiful blue eyes. Like, she is gorgeous and hilarious. She's still hilarious.
No, she is. She was kind of like a Woolworth version of Elizabeth Taylor.
That is the best way to put it. So now that we've been introduced to the four main characters, I have a bit of trivia for you.
For me?
Yeah, I've got a question.
Okay.
One of the four main characters that we have met is not from the South. Which one is it?
Annie Potts.
Wrong.
What?
She's from Tennessee. It is Jean Smart, who is from Washington State.
No.
She came up through the theater scene in Washington.
That is amazing. That makes so much sense now why she's had the longest, most successful career out of all of them.
Yeah, she can drop a Southern accent.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. But it's so funny because, like, well, you know what though? I should have not so quickly guessed, because of course Annie Potts, for anybody that's been under a rock for the last 30 plus years, Annie Potts played the amazing secretary in Ghostbusters, Janine, who her accent was so amazing that I was like, surely this has to be like, that was the real accent and the Designing Women must be the fake accent. But now I'm like, oh, my whole worldview has been shifted. Wow.
Oh, goodness. So Delta Burke tells them that she's got a new client for them that'll make them all this money, be an interracial couple. Oh no, racism, you're getting ready to hit. She says she got it by mentioning her family's help in the civil rights struggle.
That's right.
And I'll let you deliver the line.
Suzanne says that about her family, and Julia says, "What help?" And Suzanne said, "Oh, you remember when they were having that big meeting at the town, and Mother stood up and said, 'If the races must mingle, let it begin with me and Harry Belafonte.'" Bravo, Mrs. Sugarbaker, bravo. Racism solved.
So then we find out that, and this is actually moving on the plot. We've now got all the backstory for all the people. So now finally at like minute 12, we're at the plot of this episode.
Yep, which centers on Suzanne's vagina.
Correct. Her gynecologist is retiring for personal reasons. And Julia has one of my favorite one-liners in the show. Let him go. He's paid his dues. So Suzanne's like asking around, does anybody know a gynecologist?
Conveniently,
Mary Jo's ex-husband is a gynecologist.
J.D. Shackelford.
Is that his name?
Yeah.
Oh God. I dislike the leap we're gonna take it a little bit so much that I just ignored him.
Wow.
And I looked it up, and he is actually plays her ex-husband throughout all of it. Like,
wait, is it J.D. Shackelford? I think I got the name wrong. His is Ted Shively.
Ted Shively. That's right.
I didn't notate it either. It's like I forgot completely that Scott Bakula was on this show.
Ruining it, but yeah, Scott Bakula is on the show. Oh God. So we immediately cut to black and then come back, and we find out that Suzanne's dating Ted now.
I wanted to ask you this question, right? Because this is the thing that was really weird to me. Because on the episode, it looks like it's all transpired over one day. Because Suzanne's outfit hasn't changed.
A lot of their episodes do just happen in 1 or 2 days.
Yeah. So it was like she went there in her same outfit.
Yeah.
That was in the earlier part of the episode where she got his name and number. Right. And by the end of the day, they're now a couple.
Well, she's rich, so she can do whatever she wants.
That's
like
true.
There's sort of a dichotomy going on in this. Suzanne has all of this money, and
from her ex-husbands,
right? And she keeps Sugar Bakers afloat. Like it's implied that that's why she's there, because she just hands May over to them.
Yeah, like I didn't realize this either, that she was considered like the silent partner, right? Like because there's always like they always have these jokes. It's like 50-50 about why Suzanne doesn't do anything, but also like why is she here? Because she's the silent partner. And if you're going to be here, you should help out. And she's like, well, that's not why I'm here. I'm just going to hang out.
Hi, Divine Miss Mims here. If you're enjoying this nonsense, you can follow us at Mims and Maim on Twitter, Facebook, or Instagram. Also, to our Patreon supporters, thank you. We couldn't do this without you. So she starts dating Ted, and like, Julia comes back with my favorite line in the episode. I've written it down.
Is this the arch joke?
No.
Oh.
Forgive my stupidity, but just how does one make that jump from stirrups in a doctor's office to a booth at TGI Fridays?
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, God.
I thought because I notated my favorite joke, which I thought was going to be yours, which was, if sex were fast food, there'd be an arch over your bed. So I was like,
TGI Fridays. So then you, Mary Jo Chively, start pretending that everything's okay, and just keep pretending everything's okay. You're asked 100 times, no, it's okay. No, it's okay. No, it's okay. No, it's okay. Well, why did Ted leave you? Oh, he was cheating on me, but it's okay.
You know, I have to say, at the ripe old age of 40 going on 41 years old, I felt seen. I felt so seen, and I was not okay. I wasn't prepared. I was like, oh, this is too close to home at this point. I am literally living this life.
Well, and then, like, Mary Jo's discussion about her body parts and sex, like, Suzanne reads it like she's talking about sex. Yeah. I read it in watching it like she's talking about her naughty bits.
She is. No, she definitely, like, this is actually a very well written, like interpersonal thing that this woman is really going through about that, right? Like, she does it in like her dismissive, dry humor, you know, but she talks about the nurses. She says that all of the nurses that Ted kept hiring had, I don't know, these life-threatening breasts. Like, she really talks about herself. And if you think about it, right, at this point in time, this is kind of like that mid 80s where women were like revisiting taking control of everything, right? And their bodies, and Cosmo started becoming a thing again, and women were starting to, and so it was for women that were on the more like demure or not necessarily adventurous. What did she say? She made a vibrator about
she just
vibrator.
thinks of like an electrical hazard,
right? So it was like, it was really interesting because the show was basically setting up this another dichotomy that is going to be like this like sexually liberated woman and this other woman who is like on the other part of that spectrum.
When she's talking about her poussoir, you need to go back and look at Julia and Charlene's faces, because they both look completely aghast.
Right.
Completely aghast. But after all this, Mary Jo says, it's fine, it's fine, it's fine. So Suzanne leaves to go to dinner with Ted, and Mary Jo calls her a bitch.
That's the second bitch of the episode too, which in 1986, as a third, I missed one.
Because Suzanne says the word bitchy, Julia says bitchy, then she just calls her a bitch.
I miss Julia saying bitchy, probably because it didn't seem out of place. But you know, another thing that was really prominent in this episode is the fact that Mary Jo is not taking alimony from this guy.
Right. We haven't gotten to that yet, because you know what? We have to go to Tokyo Gardens and eat sushi in Atlanta in the 80s.
Which technically a Tokyo restaurant in the 80s would have been very exotic.
Oh yeah, it would have been. Especially Atlanta.
Yeah.
Like,
that would have been considered very fancy.
And it is showing that these women are modern, especially since they're all eating alone, like just a group of women at a like Tokyo Gardens. Then Mary Jo then says she's not taking alimony, even though she put him through med school, right?
Med school, exactly.
And then
we're approaching our very first Julia Sugarbaker official rant.
Right. Creepy Mr. Roper comes over.
No, don't do it. You have to do it justice. That is Ray Don Simpson. Ray Don. You have to say it with the Ray Don
Simpson. And Julia goes off on him like
the rant was too long to write down. Honestly,
exactly.
The rant was so long.
He comes over with his Singapore sling. What that man is doing at a bar at Tokyo Gardens, in like just sitting at the bar, sees a group of women, comes over with his Singapore sling, and decides to sit down with them because there's empty space. You know, fuck him. Excuse me.
Yep.
I can say that. I may bleep it. We'll see. But yeah. And so Julia's like, I'm here with my female friends. I don't need a man to be here. Please leave.
What is it? She says it multiple times. I'm not frozen. Are you frozen?
You were, but now you're back. You're back. What were you saying?
I think my favorite part about the rant is like every time she says, and I want to thank you, Ray Don. But here's something for audiences that are still getting used to this ecosystem, right? That may have not watched Designing Women. You can always tell a proper Julia Sugarbaker rant, because at the end of the rant is always a voluminous applause from the audience. So you will only hear it, the audience will only clap that much during this post-rant moment, which gives the time to breathe, because there's always a reaction post the rant of whoever she's doing the rant to. So that's you don't want to have that moment lost in the reaction to it. So they want you to experience the rant going over the person in the same way. In which case, Ray Don, strangely enough, says in this restaurant, I've got some phone calls I need to go make.
Yeah. And then exit Ray Don.
Still confused as to like, what does that even mean in the context of you're at a restaurant and you have to go make obviously we know he doesn't have a cell phone because it's 1986.
Yeah.
But that was just such a strange exit line to me.
Well, you know who's coming back on the scene? It's Suzanne Sugarbaker.
Suzanne Sugarbaker's back.
And like the chef knows her. Hey, Suzanne. And she comes, she sits down, and Ted has bought, her and Ted are going to Paris.
Going to Paris now. Once again.
Just for the weekend.
Once again, it's been a day. It's been a day.
And Ted has bought her a ring.
Yes.
And they are
wait. No, he bought her a ring. They're going to Paris, and that's where they had the little exchange where Mary Jo talks about all of the crappy things that he did for her,
right?
Like buy her an opal ring, right. And everybody's ganging up on Suzanne. To which she then says, "Well, if you're gonna react to that, you're not gonna like my other news."
I have another little Julia one-liner I liked it there when she showed the ring. Well, that must have put him back a couple of hysterectomies.
Yes.
So they're engaged.
Yeah, they're engaged. Mind you, ladies and gentlemen, everything in between, and the audience, it's been not even 24 hours. Based on the mathematics of the show. Now, this dinner itself could have been maybe a few days later, but they don't really state that in any way. They don't state that any actual time has passed between the first two acts happening in this. So we have no idea.
It had to be because Suzanne went to dinner with him.
Okay.
Why would she be meeting them and this seemed like lunch, right? This seemed like lunch the next day.
They were dressed in evening, like Suzanne had on evening wear. She wasn't dressed like daytime wear. She had on evening wear.
Maybe this is a late dinner. Maybe these girls are real mod and it's like a real late.
I don't know. I mean, that
explains the Singapore slang.
Yeah. So yeah, I was like that. I had the same debate. I was like, what is this time frame that we're looking at here?
You know what the time frame is? 80s pilot.
80s pilots.
Speaking of pilots, Suzanne brings Scott Bakula in.
Not Scott Bakula. Oh, man. Ladies and gentlemen of the audience and everything in between, Scott Bakula for 80s kids.
Oh, God. It was a Quantum Leap.
He was Quantum Leap, TV's Quantum Leap. If you've not watched it, I'm not sure to tell you at that point. It's like kind of like one of those things where it didn't age well at all. But
I've never been the biggest Scott Bakula fan. I've always found him very boring. He's like a boring version of Mandy Patinkin.
Wow.
And like Mandy Patinkin doesn't do it for me very much either.
Wow. I'm not also. I was never like I was not a diehard Quantum Leap person. If I did like Quantum Leap, it was because of the other guy, the good character actor.
Yeah.
Like I liked him a lot more. But yeah, but at the time this was pre Quantum Leap, so this was like a before stardom Scott Bakula.
And I would also like to say, did I just lose what I would like to say? I think I just lost what I would like to say. So we can keep going.
That sounds about right. So yeah. So as with anything, we want to set things up with a nice little bow on it. So we've talked about Ted a lot on this episode, multiple times. So, it would be kind of like, I don't know, a cock tease if we just did not bring and produce Scott. So here comes Dr. Ted Shively in with Suzanne. Shock all over Mary Jo Shively's face.
Right. It's like if somebody came in with your ex-boyfriend, that is exactly the way I feel like you would respond. Like, yeah. Like are you frozen or is that just your it's just your face?
I just had a moment. There are certain moments in time where I think I would probably have the same reaction. Anxiety shooting through my body.
Yeah.
And but Suzanne being Suzanne and not realizing that some people actually have emotions.
So I remember what I was gonna say. Two things. I've got one previous and one now. I do like the fact that they chose a worse actor than the 4 women to play the ex-husband. Now, going back to what Suzanne's doing right here, I actually think Suzanne is trying to help. And I think she's kind of successful. Because what Suzanne does is bring him in, take everybody else out, for them to sit there and have a coming to Jesus that Mary Jo was always too scared to have.
I agree with that statement in part. Because this is the other thing that we learn about this show, is that nothing Suzanne Sugarbaker does is ever purely for the other person.
It's true.
Right? And so when you're having that thought process of, oh wait, no, it is. No, it's not. And they actually confirm it by the end of the episode. So
right.
So JD and Mary Jo,
Ted.
Why don't you think Ted. Who is JD? JD's eventually going to be with Charlene. That's right. That's why I keep getting mixed up.
That's
so yeah. So Dr. Ted and Mary Jo, they hash it out, right? It's like a couples therapy. They flash forward, so it looks like it's been many hours that they've been sitting
and
there.
And it's dark outside.
Right, which is even stranger because you're like, what were they doing in the other room this entire time?
I don't know. Looking for Meshach Taylor, because that's his job.
Yeah, that's true. So they're hashing it out where they're doing all of these like little like jokes, but they're not really jokes because they're kind of painful.
Right.
And in which Mary Jo, she just ends her thing and she's exhausted and he's exhausted. And she just basically says, I don't want your money. I don't want this. I don't want that. I just want a sign that it was all worth it, that it all meant something. And he says, well, what is that? I just want to thank you. Right.
And he can't do it.
He can't do it, which was like, it made me hate Scott Bakula so much. I was like, oh.
And then Mary Jo calls him a jackass. Yeah. That is 4 cussings in a show.
In 1986.
That is a lot. That is a lot.
And I like the line because he does eventually say thank you. And it is actually really nice. But I the line that I related to most in this episode came from Mary Jo, obviously, where she says, it's amazing how mad you can get letting it build up for 10 to 12 years.
Well, and after he says thank you, immediately Suzanne's like, we've been stuck in this back room for way too long.
Yeah, it was instant. It was literally instant. It was like, it wasn't like they kind of drifted in. It was like, literally, they've been listening at the door the entire time, and as soon as he did what she wanted, they were like, great, you're done.
It's like the director was like, we only have 5 more minutes on this set. Let's get this wrapped up, people. Let's get this wrapped up.
CBS is booking us by the hours. Because CBS actually, like, they were the producing partners. I didn't know that about the show. That's probably like part of the reason why it's been difficult for it to get rebroadcast, because CBS has actually been pretty stingy with their shows that they license back out for reruns. But I will say the other great line that they had on here was when Mary Jo called, she does her little cheers to everybody.
Yeah.
And she says about Julia, she's the best of the big-shouldered broads. And I was like, oh.
It's true. And it ends with the cheers with just those 3.
I miss shoulder.
Well, girl, you can wear them.
I actually think I'm going to start doing that. Like, just doing exaggerated shoulder pads in my dresses.
Are you wanting to do, like, pointy ones or just, like...
No, everybody's doing those pointy things now. Like, I want to do it just like some old school 80s, like, power shoulders.
So I would not actually put in a pad. I would just shape up a little because you have broad shoulders.
Yeah.
And just, like, do a shape because you've already got the padding. You just need the shape of it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I'm actually into that. So I think that would be a new thing.
If you do the pads, it'll actually look like muscle as opposed to... It looks like you're on the roids.
I really want... So, Designing Women has made me really want to transition and, like, have 2 different drag personas, right? So, obviously, my first one is based on the 1950s. I would love to start making some 80s wear, like, Dynasty and Designing Women era things.
So, I had a coat that was stolen from me.
Yeah.
it would basically looked like the coat that Suzanne was wearing in the episode.
Okay.
But it was in Whorehound.
Ooh.
And I got that thing for Ross Cross Dress for Less, $10. It was so warm. One night after doing a little bit of drag, I was too drunk to drive home. I got in the back of my car, cuddled up in that, and fell asleep for a few hours. It was 35 degrees outside. I didn't feel it. It was fantastic. I missed that coat.
So that is episode 1 of Baking Sugar, a Designing Women podcast.
A Designing Women podcast. I would like to give a special thank you to the designer of our logo. He is a great artiste.
You didn't write it down?
Girl, I got Instagram. MrMahaffey. You can find his link in our podcast. He does a lot of stencil work, graffiti stencil work. I don't want you to think it's like he bought some acrylics and it's doing it on like some ceramics. No. It's I love his Princess Leia's. I love his he's got Julia Sugarbaker. He's got several other items. Please go check him out. I'll probably, edit this out and make something a little more formal in a little bit. But, right now it's a wandering Miss Mims. I have to write my shit down in order to actually read it. But I'll do a very special thank you after this.
Yeah, so go support him. We love all of these up and coming folks. They help support the old queens that we are.
That is absolutely right. Well, girl, I will see you next time.
Yes, next week we're going to be doing episode 2. What's here? Hold on. Called? Episode 2 is called, I'll tell you in a second. It's called, episode 2 is called, let me pause for a second before we go. Okay. Episode 2 is basically the most famous of all of the Designing Women episodes, so much so that folks like myself, and I'm sure Miss Mims as well, thought that this happened well into the show and wasn't the second episode. The second episode is the beauty contest.
We'll talk about that next time because we maybe should start talking about some of the controversies. I'll see if I can get like some People magazines and stuff back in the day because there were some issues with the cast the production company. I'll see what I can do.
Yeah, but the second episode, when we start talking about it to all of you, you're going to be like, oh, that was the number 2 episode of the show? I thought that was well into it. No.
Yeah, I did too.
Yeah, no, it is just the one that like, I want to say that it is the one that confirmed the show's existence. The first one was good. The second one is the one that basically the CBS probably was like, okay, I guess we got a season.
Exactly.
We're going to have to do a full season of this. So next week is the beauty contest. And thank you for listening to Baking Sugar, a Designing Women podcast. We love you. I am Auntie Maim.
And I am the Divine Miss Mims.
Have yourself a sweet, sweet evening. Bye.
Well, that was something. Bye.